morning and welcome to this session of Connect University to discover how to make the internet a better and safer place for children and young people. I'm Manuela Martra. I'm currently responsible in DG Connect of the unit which works on web accessibility, multilingualism and language technology, safer internet and women in digital. In a nutshell, what we do is really to ensure that people benefit from the digital transformation and no one is left behind. Before we start digging in the very interesting session of today, let me start with some housekeeping. This session is going to be recorded, and if you are missing it, you can then watch it recorded on Futurium or on the EU channel on YouTube, and you will receive a link for that. We will have the possibility of addressing your curiosity and your questions in a final Q&A session. And so to prepare that, please post your questions when you have through the slide. And now, why are we here today? To protect, to empower, and to respect children online as offline is a key priority for the EU and for this Commission. There are a number of priorities which have been identified also in the political guidelines, and the Commission, in particular DG Connect, but also with other services, is working toward deliver a package of measures which will hopefully advance on protecting and making the children enjoy a better internet. So, starting with a sneak preview on the package, I can already anticipate that for the summer we should have the guidelines on the Article 28 of the Digital Service Act, so to support the definition of privacy, security and safety applicable to all the platforms accessible to minors online. And then at the same time, we are working towards a privacy-preserving, user-friendly and interoperable age verification solution, which will be a bridge already this year before the digital wallet comes into the hands and pockets of all the EU citizens and residents at the end of 2026. Then, in the autumn, tentatively, there will be the launch of an inquiry on the impact of mental health, on the impact of social media on the mental health of children, followed by an action plan to tackle cyberbullying. So, big challenges ahead, a lot of work, but also solid starting points, because the legal framework and the policy framework on protection and empowerment of children online is already quite advanced. It can rely on rules for the protection of the privacy, like the GDPR, on rules regulating the audiovisual media services, namely the Audiovisual Media Service Director, the Digital Service Act with very specific and strong provisions for all platforms, as I've already mentioned before, the Article 28, but also reinforced measures for the very big platforms, those with more than 45 million of users on their services. And then also in the new Artificial Intelligence Act, the impact on children and children's rights is clearly taken into account. When it comes to policy, Better Internet for Kids, you can see behind me a bit the logo of the strategy. It's really the overarching policy strategy. And under Better Internet for Kids, there is a specific funding to make possible that the families, the educators, and the kids themselves, they really have a service close to them. I'm talking about the Safer Internet Center network and also the Better Internet for Kids platform, a central hub where there are thousands of resources in all languages in order to guide the users for a safe and responsible use, and also guide the policymaker, making sure that the latest trends are well captured. This session really builds on the work of the Safer Internet Centers, and you will hear very soon what are, tips, concrete tips for helping keeping your child safe or safer online while fully enjoying the digital environment. And what is key as well is that we have at our heart a balanced approach, as well as we try to make users aware of the potential risk. We also stress the opportunities, and we encourage, of course, children and all users really to thrive online. And that's why the session on the tips on how to improve the safety of the kids online will be followed then by a final presentation on how the Commission is supporting the video game industry in Europe, as innovation, growth, and competitiveness are important and has never been important as today. And with this, I have finished the introduction, and I will now really introduce the speakers, which are the important part for the session and for the public as well. So we are going to start with the Irish Safer Internet Centre, and so you will hear more as well what the Safer Internet Centre provides in practice. And we have a speaker, Jane McGarrigle. Jane oversees the development and the delivery of WebWise, which is the Irish Safer Internet Centre. She is part of the steering committee of Media Literacy Ireland, and recently also is involved in the Department of Education in the Anti-Bullying Steering Committee and the National Advisory Council for Online Safety. So, quite a big expert. Jane, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Manuela, and good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to share my slides, and hopefully you can see that okay. Great. So over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about tools and strategies for parents and guardians. We're going to talk a little bit about parental controls, time online, and some tips for you to support your child online. But before we get into that, I'm going to share a little video to help set the scene. This is a recent campaign we developed for parents and guardians to highlight the importance of having conversations. And I think in the recent context, I'm sure many of you watching have seen the Adolescence TV show, and it's brought up lots of different concerns and worries for parents, and we can talk about some of the things parents can do. But one of the things I think the TV show really highlighted for me, it's a really hard time being a child, it's a really hard time being a teacher, and it's a really hard time being a parent. So it's really important that we all work together to find solutions. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this. If not, maybe somebody can let me know.
Off to bed. Good night, love.
Emma said she saw him trying Tom with Sophie after school the other day. Do you reckon they're like a thing now?
I am super excited to show you my absolute favorite lipstick. Let's get into it. It really does give the perfect.
You look like someone who cares. That's a great start, but trying isn't enough. Just think of the impact you could have. You could inspire others to join us.
And if you're interested in finding out more about that or looking for some advice and information, you'll see webwise.ie/prepare, protect, thrive. So just a little bit of information about WebWise. We are the Irish Internet Safety Awareness Centre. So we work as part of a consortium under the Irish Safer Internet Centre alongside partners ISPCC, National Parents Council and Hotline.ie. Our role is to promote a safer, better internet, and you'll see there are some of our core areas of work: developing education resources, awareness campaigns, coordination of Safer Internet Day. We're supported by a very active youth advisory panel. They input to all areas of our work. We offer training and CPD for teachers and young people, and of most relevance for you today is our advice and supports for parents. Before we kind of delve into some of the advice and tips, I think it's really important from the outset that we kind of recognise and remind ourselves of the benefits of the online world. We very much believe in the opportunities of the online world for creativity, for connection, for learning, for exploring, for developing, you know, and the benefits do outweigh the risks, while undoubtedly there are very valid concerns about children online, whether that's bullying, accessing inappropriate content, spending too much time online. It is equally clear that the internet presents fantastic opportunities for children, and we really take a balanced approach in our work with parents, in our work with teachers, and it's really important that we are preparing children and young people with the skills and knowledge they need to navigate this ever-evolving world, and that needs to start from an early age in a scaffolded and guided way. That doesn't mean giving access, you know, unsupervised access and unlimited access. There's kind of stage and age appropriate ways we can do that. So for parents of younger children, you know, kind of what is the advice? You know, if I'm thinking about, you know, perhaps tablet use, some time online, watching videos, those sorts of things. What are the things I need to put in place, kind of guardrails that parents can think about? The supervision piece is really, really vital for parents of younger children, that any internet use or any internet access is done in a supervised way, that you are there, you are in the same room, you are close by, you are there to guide them. Parental controls can also be a really, really useful support, in particular for parents of younger children. And I'm going to talk through some of the parental controls that are available and where you can access guides on getting further advice and information. But it's also to say that parental controls shouldn't be over relied on. They're not bulletproof. So this should be alongside having a good relationship with your child. And that's what all the experts we work with, the most important thing you can do to support your child online is by having a good relationship with them. So it's important to talk to them about the risks and opportunities. And, you know, for young children, it's the simple messages, like not everyone is who they say they are online, and not everything you see online is true. You know, it can be easy to say you're somebody else online. So it's those sorts of simple messages, and always from the outset, agree what to do if something goes wrong. Again, for parents of younger children, this can be as simple as put down the device and come and get me and we'll talk about it. And one of the pieces of advice that always sticks with me, we work with a fabulous child psychotherapist called Dr. Coleman Noctor. And his kind of key piece of advice is to remind your child and to let them know they will never be in trouble for coming to you and asking for help. And I think that's a really, really important message to remind our children and our teens, because the research does tell us that not all children tell when something goes wrong online. So it's really important we kind of bridge that gap. And there's lots of reasons why children don't tell if something goes wrong. They may be embarrassed, they may be worried, A lot of children or teens may worry that their device may be taken away from them as a result. So it's important that we kind of have these open lines of communication and lines of support and help as well. So in terms of some of the parental controls that are available, and I'm going to touch on a few of them. We don't have time for all of them, but there will be links to kind of all this information at the end as well. But some of the ones we know that families really, find very useful. Google Family Link is one that parents tell us is a really easy to use tool that helps families manage content filters, security and privacy, so can manage what they see online, and see where they are as well, get notifications. It's a way for families to kind of help put up those guardrails, particularly for younger children, and to get families involved as well. And Google also have YouTube Kids as well. Again, this is another child-friendly tool with child and age appropriate content that is selected and moderated. I was at an event the other day where our young people spoke to adults about ways to make the internet safer online, and actually one of our teenagers noted that she thought YouTube Kids was a really good age appropriate platform for children as well. You may or may not be aware that many of the social media accounts now do kind of family pairing or teen accounts, that help with this idea of kind of scaffolding and helping holding your teen's hand as they go on social media for the first time. So the Instagram teen accounts, you can link your account to your teen's account with their permission, of course, and this allows for open conversations and dialogue. And there's functions in there like screen time management, restricted mode, which allows to limit the appearance of content that may not be appropriate, and restrict who can send messages as well. And you can see all the functions within the app itself. Again, might be helpful if your child is using Instagram, or they're coming to an age where you might be thinking about agreeing that's a really good starting point for this. TikTok also have family pairing, again, similar to Instagram teens, screen time management, restricted mode, and direct messaging as well. And the functions of them, they are very user friendly as well. So something worth taking a look at. Snapchat also offer parental controls within the family center. Again, this is with connected accounts and permission from your teen, so you can view your teen's friends, see who they've messaged, restrict sensitive content and report abuse. And similarly to Google, Apple also offer some really useful parental controls, app limits, content privacy, password protection, managing screen time as well, which is worth looking at too. I think one of the most common questions we get asked when we talk to parents and families and to teachers as well is, I think my child is spending too much time online. I'm struggling to get a hold of it, struggling to kind of put proper rules in place. So, what are the things we need to know, we need to understand to be able to deal with this better? First of all, I think it's really important to note that not all screen time is equal. There's lots of ways children and young people could be spending their time online, which can be actually very useful for them, very valuable for them, and can benefit them. So, for example, going on YouTube to learn more about how to learn to play guitar is a very useful way that they can be spending their time. But equally, if we're scrolling for hours on end over short videos on TikTok or Instagram, there's an opportunity cost there. You know, we're losing time that, you know, they could be doing, spending other things. So it's about kind of getting that balance right, and this idea of getting a healthy digital diet. And it's also not to say that, you know, fortunately, there is no magic number about the right amount of time online. As I said, for parents of younger children, any time online should be supervised and should be done with that support and guidance. And then, you know, you may relook at the rules and adjust them as your child gets older. So it's really important to agree limits and putting guidance in place. And, you know, while it may not seem like it, you know, in the evening time when we're having rows or we're coming off roadblocks for the evening, children and teens really do welcome rules and guidance and restrictions with this regard, as they find it hard to switch off. We as adults find it hard to switch off from our apps, from our smartphones. That's because they're designed very sophisticatedly with some of the best minds in the world, you know, with the motivation of keeping us spending our time online as much as possible. So it's really important, you know, if adults, we can't regulate this ourselves, it's important that we are guiding our children with this respect, and that we're leading by example as well. We spoke to our youth panel a couple of years ago, and we were developing some resources and talking points, co-creating them with our youngsters, and we talked to them about the rules they have at home around time online. And many of them told us about the frustrations of them being told to get off their phones, you know, constantly being told to get off their devices. But if they look around and they see that their parents are on their devices a lot of the time as well, you know, that it gives them mixed messages and it's hard to buy into the rules then. So to, you know, kind of come at this as a whole family and make agreements together. So some tips for managing screen time online. It's really important to get to know how they're spending their time online and to help them find useful content. You know, there's so much information available. Some of it's really good, but there's a lot of really poor, low quality content online. It's important that we as the adults, you know, whether it's parents, educators, we point them in the right direction of useful content, whether that's stuff from the BBC or in Ireland, you know, from RTE Junior or the National Geographic. There's some brilliant, you know, educational games, content online. So it's good to help them find that and to set them up for that. You can also use your parental controls to help you and lean on them to give a guide on, you know, setting limits and monitor what they're playing for how long as well. It can also be useful for parents of children in the same way that, you know, sometimes it can be a struggle to get them to come out of the playground after a while to go home, to give them warnings so that they know that they have time maybe to finish up what they're doing, to finish up their game, you know, and prepare them for coming off their device, you know, at the agreed time. It's really important that we talk about kind of, you know, agreed switch off times, particularly at night time, and removing devices from the bedroom in the evening, you know, so that we're leaving our devices downstairs and that we all do that and that there's a switch off time. It's really important that our children are getting good sleep, good quality sleep. And we know for lots of families that we talk with that they find this a particularly useful rule for them. It can also, for younger children, it can be quite useful to print out your agreement in, you know, kind of the family area so that you can refer to this and say, well, we did talk about this and we have agreed this. Again, we know families find that quite useful as well. We've also developed a series of 6 top tips to kind of help parents when thinking about this and maybe starting on their journey. The first one, we know this can be a really overwhelming space, and it can seem like there's always, you know, something new coming up, and it's impossible to stay up with this or to keep up to date with that. And we'd really like to reassure you with that respect. You don't have to be an expert, a technical expert. This is about having good relationships and conversations with your child, and actually that there's lots of good information available for you out there. So you can get informed by visiting websites like webwise.ie, or of course the Better Internet for Kids platform, which Gareth is going to talk to you about, which is a wonderful resource with lots of information and advice. The conversation, the relationship piece is key. Have regular conversations with your child about the risks, about the benefits, get to know what they're doing online, ask them questions, be curious and not judgmental about what they're doing online. It's a really important part of their lives, and they use it a lot for connection and learning and growing. And so to recognize that, you know, have your rules in place. Think about putting a family agreement in place around internet use expectations. And this includes things like values, being respectful, talking about consent, and having rules in place that there's a healthy balance. So we're allowing for other activities and making time for other family activities as well. That asking for help piece, reminding them, as Dr. Coleman Doctor says, you will never be in trouble for asking for help, and don't ever be afraid or embarrassed to. There's lots of things that can come up online, and just to reassure them that you are there to support them. You know, modeling behavior, you know, is so powerful for children. So when, you know, we're pushing our rules in place, that we're all getting on board with that, and we're all playing ball. And if we're not, we're explaining why, you know, for example, you know, that you might need to go on your device if you're having to do a little bit of extra work. It was really interesting. I did a radio interview around Safer Internet Day with the local radio station, and the interviewer said she was frustrated that she was down at the football pitch and she noted some parents on their phones instead of watching their children play. And I replied and I said, how do you not know that they mightn't be doing their shopping list? They mightn't be getting ready for the next day. You know, we recognize parents are really busy and there's lots of things going on for them as well. And finally, join in. The internet's a really great resource for children. So get to know what they're doing, get involved in the games they're playing. You know, for teenagers, find out who they're following at the minute, what they're interested in, why they follow them, why they like them. Influencers are playing an increasingly important role in young people's lives. So get to know more about them and be curious, ask them questions, get them to explain stuff to you. That can be a really good way to bridge those communication gaps. And of course, for advice and support, you can go on the Better Internet for Kids portal. I talked at the start about parental controls. They have a brilliant guide for setting up parental controls, and we can share the link in the chat for that. So thanks very much. I'm going to wrap that up and look forward to taking questions towards the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you really for giving the flavor of what then a Safer Internet Center does on a daily basis, and you know how you are confronted with questions and practical needs from parents. I also saw in Slido coming in a lot of questions, and indeed I'm sure that already Gareth today will help them in guiding the participants in finding information. But then this session is also a kind of travel across Europe, okay? So if you don't know, I'm based in Luxembourg, then other colleagues are in Brussels, Jane is in Ireland, and soon we will move now, yes, to Belgium and then to another country. But just to say that the same features as WebWise you can find, you know, also in your national Safer Internet Center. They do all provide awareness-raising activities and material. They offer an helpline and also a system whereby anonymously report suspected child sexual abuse material, what we call hotlines. Then This network altogether has also a very significant impact. Last year, it reached 35 million Europeans. And it also is key to flag, emerging trends and to gather data, which then inform and help the enforcement of legislation, namely of the Digital Service Act, so that everything is well connected together. But now time to go to Belgium and to introduce you our second speaker, Karen Linton. Karen is a media literacy expert at MediaWis, which is part of the Safer Internet Center Belgium. And she will provide us with important information on basically how to be safe and to use responsible games, and also how to be aware of the challenges that children may face as consumers. The focus on this aspect of children as consumers was also particularly developed last year and this year under the Better Internet for Kids initiative through a campaign which is called the Advice Campaign. And so also if you go then to the platform, you will find plenty of resources and tips. But now let's hear directly from Karen what are her tips. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Manuela. Hi, everyone. I will just share my screen here for you. There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen. As Manuela already introduced me, I'm part of the Belgian Safer Internet Center. And there we are with multiple organizations. So we have Child Focus, Media Animation, but also MediaWis there. Within MediaWis, I work mainly on informing parents in many different ways, and we do that through our website, medianest.be. I want to talk to you today about games and game purchases, indeed, like how are children encouraged to spend money online, how are they targeted as a young consumer. And so I'd like to start off with a quote from a parent. It's one of the many ones that there are in Europe. So like, it's a very relatable story. It's something that we hear every now and then that someone says like, okay, all of a sudden, my child spent a lot of money and I didn't know about it. And so apparently my credit card was linked to the gaming account and I was not aware of it. What can I do? And so that's why today I would like to take you through how children are encouraged to spend money in games so that you have a broader idea about that. And then, of course, also give you some concrete advice on what you can do to support your child. First of all, before we say like, how are they encouraged to spend money in games? It's always good to know like gaming is a very popular activity among children. We often talk a lot about social media use and gaming is sometimes a bit overlooked, whereas it's still like also a very popular activity among children. These are numbers that we have in Flanders, but it just gives you an idea of the amount of children that are playing video games. And if we then look at how many of them are spending money on virtual items. We asked it to their parents 2 years ago, and then you can see that for the 9 to 12-year-olds, already 1 in 5 spends money on virtual items or currencies in games, and then for the 13 to 18-year-olds, so the teenagers, it's even 1 in 4. So it's good to be aware of this to make sure that that is something important to talk about as well within the family. Now, if you're not very familiar with in-game purchases, it's good to know that there are many different forms of those in-game purchases. So for instance, you could buy virtual items A famous example of this is like the skin in Fortnite. So it's like a nice outfit, but it could also be some moves that you can do or some tools that you can use. You can also download some content that you can buy. So for instance, an extra level or a new world within a game. Or you could also spend money on battle passes, which are systems to unlock some rewards. And those rewards are often better in a paid version. It's also good to know that for those in-game purchases, sometimes it's really purely cosmetic or for fun. So for instance, you're out changing your outfit. It doesn't necessarily have an outcome for you to win in the game or to get ahead in the game, but it's to make you look better, or just for fun. But sometimes you also have pay to win items, and those are items that really give you an advantage in the game. So you could get stronger, or you could skip a level, or you could get a better player by doing it. So it's important to also know the difference between those two kinds of in-game purchases. In-game purchases often happen with an in-game currency, and those in-game currencies are really virtual coins that are specific for the game. So for instance, in Roblox, you have Robux, in Fortnite, you have V-Bucks, in Minecraft, you have Minecoin. So each game has like their own specific in-game currency. You can often buy it with real money, but you can also, depending on the game, sometimes earn it by playing some levels or by completing some tasks within the game. But it's also good to know that those in-game currencies exist because for children, it kind of hides the real costs of the items that they are buying within the game, because it's harder for a child to understand on the one hand that they're spending money, that they're spending real money, because of course they see like the virtual coin, but it's harder to see that the real money behind it. And also understanding how much money they're spending is hard, because for instance, let's say you have 10,000 in-game currencies for 10 euros, then it's hard to like calculate how much money you're actually spending if you're buying a tool for 700 of the in-game currency, for instance. So it's good to know that these mechanisms are there to help your child navigate them better as well. Also, often those in-game currencies need to be purchased in like bundles, so in a pack, which is not necessarily the amount of in-game currency you need at that moment, which makes the leftover currency can encourage you to purchase again in the future. So that's also good to know. Then loot boxes are like a specific case, like a specific example of these in-game currencies. And a loot box is actually a mystery box in a game that you can open to get a random item. It can be bought with in-game currency, and then again, as I said before, you can or earn that in-game currency by playing the game, or you can buy it with real money. And it's often very tempting for children to buy them. I'd like to compare them to the Pokemon cards that you have offline. Like, you want to know what's in the pack, you want to know which one you'll get. It's a chance to get like a very rare item, and it's the same for this loot box within a game. And then sometimes also they are only available for a short period of time, which could create the idea of what we call artificial scarcity. So the idea, like, if I don't buy it now, I might not be able to have access to it later. So that's a very specific case, and those loot boxes are sometimes compared to a form of gambling. And that's why in Belgium also in the past 4 years, there has been a research to see, like, okay, for those blurring boundaries, like, is a loot box some sort of gambling element or not? There has been a huge research project to see if children are using those gambling activities in games, what it does to their intention to gamble with real money later on in life. And there we see that there is a connection between gambling and games, and then gambling for real money later on. And we see that that they think more positive about gambling with real money, that they have a higher intention of participating in gambling, and that once they reach the minimum age, they more often participate in gambling activities if they participated in gambling activities within video games before. And what was also very interesting there is that this did not only happen if they participated in the gambling activities themselves, but also if they were watching videos about someone else who was opening those loot boxes or was performing other gambling activities within games. So that's good to know, because it's very important to talk about these mechanisms with your child to make sure that they are aware of it, and that you can help them make conscious decisions about them. That could also help them later on in life. Of course, there's a lot of legislation going on. Manuela said it at the start of this webinar as well. There's already a lot of legislation within the EU, and there's also a lot of work that's been done right now on new legislation. And for now, on those gambling elements, there's still need for a more clear and global EU framework, but there are a lot of opportunities there. So for instance, within the Digital Services Act, we see that dark patterns are prohibited. So for instance, that artificial scarcity within the loot boxes is, for instance, one of those dark patterns that can be taken into account there. And then also maybe the Digital Fairness Act could also take a look at the games, but that's still in the beginning phase there. But there's an opportunity there as well. What should be taken into account, though, is that, for instance, in Belgium, we already have a ban on paid loot boxes, and there we see that it's not always complied by game developers, because, of course, like the idea of a paid loot box can be if you can also earn the in-game currency throughout the game by playing it, then maybe it's not completely a paid loot box. So by that, it's not always complied. And always children also find a way to bypass the ban. So we see that some of them are using VPNs. That's also something that research project looked at, and a lot of children said that they were using VPNs to get access through another country to the loot boxes anyway. Now, of course, that might sound a bit scary, but it shouldn't scare you too much, because luckily a lot of young children enjoy playing video games very much, and there's a lot of fun in doing so. And it's just good to support your children to make sure that they can maximize all the benefits that those video games offer them, and minimize the risks that might occur when they are playing them. And so that's why I'd like to give you some advice on what you can do to do that in a proper way. And as Jane already mentioned, as everyone will probably mention today, conversation really is key, and it really is the most important part of media parenting, to make sure that you have a conversation on the one hand with your child on what they're doing online, what they're playing, and then on the other side on what the opportunities and the risks are, and how you can accompany them there. We also ask children every other year, like, are you talking about these topics with your family and also in schools? And we see that gaming is a topic, especially in schools, that is not very popular yet, and at home a lot of people are already talking about games with their child, but also there's still room for some improvement there. So it's really a topic that we should not overlook, and that we should also discuss with our children at home. And if we look at if there are rules at home about the online purchases, then we see that that's actually a very popular topic to have some rules about at home. So a lot of the teenagers have rules about what they can spend money on online. So that's very interesting to see there. What you can do concretely. I have some tips there to close off my presentation. So first of all, it's very important to talk about games and what's happening there, as I mentioned before. And you can also play along, as Jane already mentioned as well, because that really gives you an insight in what the game is, what's happening there. And it's a very fun activity to do with your child as well. And it's also important to address the possible risks that there are, and that you explain to your child, for instance, how they might be trying to convince your child to spend some money, how your child can recognize this, and then of course also explain the difference between this in-game currency, real money, and if they have trouble finding out how it works, that they can always come to you and ask for help. It's also very important to have some clear rules about those in-game purchases, because it can be very tempting, and it's okay if you as a parent are saying, like, for me, it's not allowed, we are not going to do that. And that's of course a possibility, but then it's important to have some clear rules about it, to talk it through with your child, and to also maybe look at it when they've aged a bit to see, like, should we revisit this? We also hear from parents that sometimes it's like, okay, if my child asks it to me, then they can buy an item in a game from time to time. Some give their child a coupon, for instance, for their birthday, which allows them to spend some money in a game, but then it's a limited amount of money. And some say, like, they can spend their own money. So there are many opportunities there, many options, but it's just good to have some clear rules of what you want to apply within your family and explain it to your child and discuss it with them. And then, of course, it's also very interesting to not link your credit card or any other payment method to your account of your child's account, any account that is used to game, to make sure that no one is spending money unconsciously, like without realizing that they are spending it online. As Jane mentioned all the parental control settings earlier, also for games, there are a lot of parental control opportunities. And you can, for instance, turn off in-game purchases on game consoles, but also within the games themselves. You should, however, always be aware that those parental controls are not waterproof solutions. Children can sometimes bypass them. So it should definitely not replace the conversation that you have with your child. It should always be accompanied by explaining the rules, and like the parental control is a very good resource to help you applying the rules that there are. As Manuel already mentioned, like, there's a very good, on the Better Internet for Kids platform, there's very good information on this topic as well. So I would advise you to definitely check out the Advise Online campaign if you want to find out more about this topic. There's resources in 29 languages, so you can find a lot of information there in your own language as well. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and if there's any questions, you can pop them into the chat for the Q&A later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen, for these really insights and tips on how to play smart and safely. As announced before, then we will continue also the conversation on games, seen with also the angle for adults, because it's not just kids. We will discover that actually a majority of our adults are also very much hooked by online game. There will be some specific questions which we'll take later. I would just like to address one that I saw, because it's about what is happening in the UK, and is also linked to what, Karen, you mentioned about the legal framework. So for UK, you should know that for under the DSA enforcement, there is an administrative agreement, and so we are regularly in touch with Ofcom, the regulator of UK, as well as with the e-Safety Commissioner of Australia, because these are, of course, issues that go beyond, the borders, and international cooperation is very important. Then another aspect about the legislation, indeed the DSA to a very good extent already addressed many of the concerns, their pattern, the addictive design. There was the success story already of TikTok Lite not being then further piloted in Europe because of an open investigation, and then the service was considered to be potentially too addictive, and then so it was abandoned for Europe. Just to say that these rules, they work. Of course, there is, enforcement needs time and evidence, but is ongoing and is one of the priority, if not the priority, under the DSA enforcement, the part of protection of minors. Then, when it comes to the Digital Fairness Act, indeed the scope is still being discussed, but the angle will be on when children are affected as consumers, and then it will address the gaps. What are the gaps in terms, for instance, of scope? Because the DSA, for instance, target the games as intermediary. If there is a game platform, but if it's a game developer, for instance, is a bit different. Having said that, now time to move from Belgium to Lithuania. And to move also to another topic, a very hot one, cyberbullying, because in the last 5 years, consistently, this has been the main reasons for contacting the network of the helplines by the Safer Internet Centers. And statistics, recent statistics, they say that 1 in 6 is affected by, is a victim of cyberbullying, and 1 in 8 is the perpetrator of cyberbullying. And of course, this is, a worrying issue, a pressing also societal issue. That's why just before this meeting, I was in an important meeting with several cabinets at the Commission and many services, because it's really, something that has also been distributed across the portfolio of many commissioners. And we are all committed to deliver an action plan and also consultation to prepare this action plan for the specific part of focus of minors. Started in the last months, confirming that, for instance, a definition of cyberbullying is pressing, and also that there are, needs like in terms of prevention measures, start from early education, and also we need to offer to the children clear and user-friendly reporting channels on the platform or also offline. Having said that, now it's time to introduce Egle Tamulionite. I hope to have spelled it correctly. Egle is a lecturer and the coordinator of the campaign against bullying with Childline, which is the Lithuanian Safer Internet Center helpline, and in general is an helpline for children for their emotional support. So, Egle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and hello. Let me just share my slides before I start. I hope you can see it now. So, yeah, hi, my name is Egle, and I represent the Lithuanian helpline in a Safer Internet project. And like it was said before, we are also a general helpline for children who need emotional support. And our counselors hear about bullying around 8 times per day. Well, we are not a big country, less than 3 million people. So I don't know if this number 8 times per day is a lot or not, but what is important also is that cyberbullying constitutes more and more the bigger part of this number each year. And the number is rising, not only in Lithuania, but I guess universally. And also, when we speak about cyberbullying, it gives a sense of hopelessness and helplessness sometimes, I guess, because, yeah, it's widespread. We are not sure always if we can do something. Children tend to not tell adults about such situations. So what can be done? So I'm here to discuss how we as adults, as parents, can maybe get rid of this sense of helplessness and be there for our kids who are in such situations or risk being in such situations. So I don't know if I don't know if my slides are working correctly, and I'm not sure. What do you see? Because it seems like it
Yes,
got
yeah, we see them.
But I want to switch the slide and I cannot for some reason. I don't know if it switched for you.
It does switch, yeah. This is important steps to take.
Okay, yeah, this is not this is not what I see. Okay, so yeah, sorry for that.
So if you watch the ones in WebEx, that's usually safer. And then,
Mhm.
then for the audience listening, there is a small delay, however.
Okay, yeah.
So if you watch your slides in WebEx, then
Yes, sorry for that. Okay, so first of all, what is cyberbullying? We have different definitions in different countries. So I didn't want to just go with some definition. I copy paste from Google, and I wanted to rather discuss how children see it. So in Childline we have a youth advisory team which consult us in various topics about life of children and youth. So we discussed how they see cyberbullying, and the most important things that helped children to tell if that's cyberbullying or a joke or maybe a banter or conflict or anything else, because situations can be very, very similar. But what helps children to tell if that's cyberbullying is it's repetition, meaning that usually if we hear about one episode about cyberbullying, it's usually not just this very moment. Usually it's repeating. It can transfer to different platforms, and by essence, it's something that repeats because there's a will to repeat it. So the logic of repetition is also important. Another thing is power imbalance. Like kids put it, it's not just one person who is insulting you or who is spreading rumors about you. The idea is to gather as many people as possible and to make you look like you're one, you're excluded, or that everyone hates you. So this is always about power imbalance. And this power imbalance can be just because someone put you in a situation like which you cannot escape. And the third thing is disregard to feelings. We can tell it. We can think of some insulting joke. So if someone insults you by joke and you say stop, I don't want to hear that. It hurts me. If they don't stop, then it's not a joke anymore. This is how children feel it. So it's again, it's a situation where you can, no matter what you do, no matter that it causes you pain, actually it continues. So that indicates that we are not in a situation of a joke or a conflict, or we are in a field of cyberbullying already. And where does it happen? So it can, like I said, it can happen simultaneously on different platforms. It can have different forms, like direct messages on messaging apps, or spreading rumors, or impersonating someone on social media platforms, hateful comments or group actions in online gaming communities or messaging rooms. So it can really be different spaces around internet, like anywhere where kids are and where they can communicate. But what's important here too is that we're not only talking about cyber world, we're not only talking about certain apps, usually we're also talking about people who are meeting somewhere in physical world. It might be school, and most often is. So it's really important to remember that it's not just this one episode which is in some app. It's mostly coming from somewhere else, and and it's usually connected to physical world too. Sometimes we don't get to know. Sometimes children won't tell us that something is wrong, that something is happening, and they have good reasons for that. There were some ideas already said before what might be happening, why children don't tell us, but then we can tell it, we can guess, we can make a good guess from some hints they give by their behavior, by their emotional state, by their social life, and changes in their body feelings. Like, for example, we can notice that our child really has mood changes, like really quick mood changes out of a sudden, like it didn't happen before and now it's happening. We can see that they're anxious, irritable, they don't want to talk to us. Maybe they start criticizing themselves. They don't like their appearance all of a sudden, or they question worth of living at all. Also, we can see some changes in their behavior, which we cannot explain. For example, they're not interested in something they used to be very much interested before, or they hide their screens. They don't want to talk about certain topics with us. They they stay online at night. Maybe their academic results change, they drop, or their school attendance. Or maybe they have multiple accounts. And this is also true not only about people who experience bullying, but those who perpetrate bullying. It's very important. If a child has a lot of different accounts, or if they boast about their digital skills and they talk badly about other peers and they're really interested in popularity, it also might be a sign that the child is taking active part in bullying. Also, social life, like they don't want to hang out with friends that much anymore. Or in case of perpetrators, they hang out with a new group of friends. Might be also a hint. And also, of course, when children are distressed, they might not feel well, like in their stomach, or they can more frequently call from school and ask you to take them home because they have a headache or something. So they try to avoid school, or they generally not feel okay in their bodies. And this is what children say, how they feel when they are in trouble, and they try to tell us about it. But sometimes we just happen to not really respond in a good way. And that's actually, I guess, the most important moment for which will decide if we will succeed in helping them or not, is that first contact. So sometimes it's really difficult, because hearing the news about cyberbullying can be really tough for adults too, because it's a stressful situation, especially when we don't feel comfortable, when we don't feel confident with our digital skills or with our understanding of social life online. So it can be really stressful. So sometimes we just underestimate, like we think that it's no big deal, or we think that it's just kids thing that they should fix by themselves, and which is not true in cyberbullying case, because cyberbullying is always about power imbalance, which means that it's not a situation that children can fix on their own without help of adults. Sometimes we just start blaming them, that why are they there at all? Like, why are they using their phone so much? Why are they on Snapchat if they're not age appropriate? And so on. Or sometimes we just rush to the solutions. We really try hard to find the best solutions as soon as possible, and we skip the first step, which is really not about solutions at all. It's about listening. And this way, what it does to the situation, and also to our relationship with the child, is that they will not come to us anymore. So it's really important not to rush to the solution part, but to really stay a bit with the child in this emotional moment. So what responses actually help is, so I put it in 3 phases, that's why different colors. So as emotional support line, we are always doing this first step, the emotional support step, which is really crucial because this is not just one-time situation. Most often it's something that is deeper and it will take time to solve. So we really have to spend our time listening to our kid, not interrupting, not judging or not trying to rush to the solution part, but really listening and trying to help them calm down. So yeah, what we need here is patience and really not talking, which is what kids say is always is sometimes hard to do for adults, but in this part it's really important to stay listening and reassuring that this is not their fault, that this is a situation that is really difficult, and it makes sense that there are hard feelings involved. It makes sense that the kid is not feeling well, it's really stressful. So yeah, what they need is being listened to, being heard, and being reassured that we're here for them. And only then we can go to the second phase to really find out everything we need about the situation. Because in cyberbullying situations, it might be not clear at all, like what the child says to us, what we might not know. This platform where cyberbullying is taking place, we'll need to really find out a lot of things. That's why this first phase of feelings is so important, because if we don't have a good connection, the child will not talk to us and they will not want to explain the situation that well. And we really need that in order to take action. So about actions, I will just talk in a minute. Now I just want to jump to the phase 3, which is follow-up. Like I said, cyberbullying is something that continues. Usually it's not just this one day, not just this one conversation or one moment. And it's really important that we work together with the school to find out more if if kids from the school are involved. Also that we keep an eye on the situation, like what is happening after a week or after a month. And what is our child's emotional state, and why is it so important? Because cyberbullying bullying in general has 2 types of outcomes. So the first thing is, of course, these really difficult feelings like anger or hopelessness or sadness, or cyberbullying comes with lots and lots of difficult feelings. So this is like this instant outcomes of cyberbullying, but there also are long-term effects, and this part we can actually manage. Like it's not possible to do something about feelings that already happened, but our role is actually to prevent these hard feelings from growing and growing and growing to some long-term results, like low self-esteem or suicidal thoughts or low school performance, which is a long-term outcome of cyberbullying. This is why it is so important to respond in a good way, and these are the most important instant steps that we should do once we learn that this is a cyberbullying situation. When we already know what happened and where it happened, this is what we should do. So first of all, collecting evidence. Before we delete anything, before we do anything else, we have to collect evidence. And that means not only screenshots, URLs, but also accounts. Timing is really important. Like we need to get all the information that can be useful. After we collect the evidence, now we can think of reporting. We can report content, what is being said or shown, or is it videos or comments or private messages. We can also so every service provider has ways to report. And another thing is where that we can report to local helplines and hotlines. It differs in every country, but we already spoke about that every country has one, at least one. And also in some cases, not in all cases of cyberbullying, but in some cases, it's good to consider reporting to the police. For example, if it's just some bad words, bad comments, of course, it's not a crime to talk bad about people. But if it's sharing news or sensitive information, it might be the case where we should consider police. After that, we think of preventing contact, like how to help our child not to get contacted by the perpetrators anymore. And there we can talk with the kid about not responding, not trying to provocative messages, maybe blocking, maybe reviewing privacy settings, looking into how we can secure their account so that the perpetrators cannot create a new account and contact them again, and so on. And another thing is seeking support. There are helplines, there are maybe other trusted adults, and it's not a very bad thing entirely if our kid won't talk to us, but maybe prefers to talk to someone else. If there are other trusted adults that can help, it's a really good idea for children to talk to them. And one last note, sometimes it happens, and it happens more often than we expect, that our kids also take active part in cyberbullying. And here the same rules apply. We really need to be calm with them. We really need to be non-judgmental with them, because this is what children fear the most, to be judged, and they want to still be heard, and we need to hear their version of story. We need to find out all details there are, so that we can help them not to do this again. Then we have to discuss that feeling something is not equal with acting on it, meaning that you will most likely hear that something provoked this action from your child, that someone was bad to them, and then they kind of revenged it. This happens often, actually. So it's really important to discuss how children can act in a different way when they feel something, when they feel anger, when they are. How could they respond to maybe unfair treatment to them, or to something that angers them? And of course, we need to define boundaries, but this is something that has already been said before. And here it's really important to note that if there's something that already happened, and we now are seeing consequences, it's not the right time to think of punishments. Of course, there has to be some rules, but rules have to be agreed on before something happens. So I think the most important thing we all can do is just go and talk to our kids before anything happens. What would be the rules, and what would be outcomes if the rules get broken? So yeah, it's not a good idea to take their phones just like a punishment for doing something wrong, but we should agree about it in advance, like what would happen. And children have, and like we heard today, when rules are clear, children are really thankful for that. It helps them also, because they don't want to be bad. They just respond to some situations in the way they know. So this is important to keep in mind. And since my time is up, I'm really, really thankful for being here.
Thank you, Egle, and I think you were really speaking to the many of us as parents, besides being then in our professional role today. So I also saw that like the stream of questions, was a bit slower for this session because I think we were so much connected and also reflecting on our situation at home. But now participants are encouraged, if they have more questions, also to post a question on this specific session. Thanks also for reminding us that we really need to start from detecting a problem which is difficult most of the time to detect, and then we have not to rush into a solution. That's why also, for the action plan that we are preparing, we are taking a bit of time because we want really to listen from the relevant parts, including the children. So we have started with some targeted consultation, but then something even broader will come. And then now in our travel journey across Europe, we are moving from Lithuania back to Belgium and the European SchoolNet, at least virtually, Gareth, since, I think you are in the UK. But it is also a nice bridge because Gareth will present the Better Internet for Kids platform. And if you open it really on the top, you have the button to reach the helpline in all the languages. It's really, in one click, you can then get help. Because Egle, what you were saying is very interesting and is something I'm sure that the slides, with all the steps will really speak to many of us. But sometimes we also need just, to talk with experts and contact the helplines. And this is why, the Commission is keeping co-funding the network, and we want to give even more visibility. Now, Gareth. So, Gareth worked with the European SchoolNet, which is the coordinator of the Network Safer Internet Center on behalf of the Commission. Then is an expert on child safety. He also cooperates with the UK Safer Internet Center, which is part of this network. We don't, since Brexit, we don't fund the center any longer, but they stay still very relevant and active in the network. And Gareth also developed a lot of educational materials, and cyberbullying is also one of the topics of his specialization. So he will also help us then in taking the question, moderate the question and answer session in the end. But Gareth, now your time to make the public discovering the Better Internet for Kids platform. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Manuela. Good morning, everyone. And thank you to all of our speakers so far, my colleagues from the Safer Internet Centres. I think they've done an excellent job of breaking down some very complex topics. And hopefully you found all the information and advice useful so far. I'm going to give you some more now, and some of it repeats some of the messages that my colleagues have already given this morning, but I think that's no bad thing. I think it's very useful to have that reminder, including some of the links. I did see some questions in the chat asking for some of the links from previous presentations. One or two of those links will be featured in my presentation now. So I'll just share my screen so that you can see it. And please do keep those questions coming into the chat. As Manuela said, after we've had all our speakers, we will come back to a Q&A session, and we'll try to address as many of those questions. Although I have seen a few people actually helping out in the chat and the questions by posting some answers or some links to other resources. So thank you for that as well. So yes, as you heard, I'm part of European SchoolNet. I'm a member of the digital citizenship team there. And as Manuela mentioned, we are responsible for delivering work under the Better Internet for Kids initiative. That includes the Better Internet for Kids platform, which I'm about to show you, and the many resources and sources of advice there, but also involving the coordination of the Safer Internet Centres that we've already spoken about this morning as well. So I'm just going to do a whistle-stop tour through some of the main features that you may find useful on the Better Internet for Kids platform, places to get further advice, but some useful information for you as a parent or caregiver. If you are someone who works in education as a teacher or works with children, there is content on there as well. I'm not going to cover that in detail in this session, but I will kind of point you in the right direction as we go through. So bear with me a second. There we go. If you are familiar with the Better Internet for Kids platform, you may be aware that we moved URLs or web addresses late last year. So you may just need to update your bookmarks if you haven't previously. It used to be betterinternetforkids.eu, and you can see the address is slightly more complicated, but it does now bring us underlined with other websites run by one and coordinated by the Commission. And actually, it's given it a fresh look. It's much easier to search for information on the site now, and obviously, it's just given a much better look and much easier to use. So please do update your bookmarks if you haven't already, and you can see the address on the screen there. At a glance, there's a number of different features and sections on the site, and they can easily be accessed at the main menu bar that you see at the top when you're actually on the website. They encompass the things that you can see on the left here: news, a knowledge hub, resource directory, which I'll come to in a moment, various events and campaigns that we are a part of or that Safer Internet Centres are a part of. Manuela has already mentioned there's a quick button at the top for getting help and contacting your National Safer Internet Centre. And there are also learning corners, which I'm going to focus on in a little bit more detail today. I'm afraid the list on the left is a different order to the way I'm about to present them in the slides, but bear with me, I'm sure we'll all stick together. Usually, many times when I talk about the Better Internet for Kids platform, I'll actually do a live demo or tour, but I'm conscious we're tight on time today. So I do really recommend that you go and have a look at the platform and explore it and look for these things that I'm talking about. But I have just got a few screenshots on the next few slides to highlight things that you may find useful. One of which is our fantastic resource directory that we've been building for a number of years now, that includes many, many resources from across the InSafe network of Safer Internet Centres and resources that we have produced as European SchoolNet as part of the Better Internet for Kids work as well. So you can see a screenshot on the screen here. Thanks to the new website, it's now much easier to search these resources and filter them by the age of your child or the children that you might work with, to filter by specific language, particular topics and keywords. So it's much, much easier now to try and find materials that may be in your own language or about a particular theme or topic that you are interested in learning more about. So that's well worth having a play with and explore to look for particular resources. A couple of these have already been mentioned. In fact, you heard Karen, when she was talking about gaming and loot boxes, talk about the AdWise Online campaign. That's one of our more recent ones. On the campaigns tab of the site, you can see all the current campaigns. AdWise Online was live mainly throughout January and February earlier this year, but there's a wealth of materials and resources on there to help you understand not just loot boxes, but other manipulative marketing practices that may exist in games and other online services, and how you can talk to your child about those and support them in understanding those issues. And I think you probably would agree that a common thread throughout all of our speakers today has been the importance of discussion in families, talking about these issues, working together to develop strategies and solutions, knowing how to get help, and in some cases getting to grips with technological features and solutions that can help you as well. You can see there's another one that we've been running for the last year or so, which is the Media Smart Online, which is a campaign around media literacy initiatives in various countries. But the really important one that you may already be familiar with is Safer Internet Day, which takes place in February each year. So Safer Internet Day for 2025 has now already passed. It took place on Tuesday, the 11th of February, but it's a fantastic one to explore, and you'll see in a couple of slides' time a way of quickly finding out what your country may have been doing on Safer Internet Day this year and getting easy access to any advice that your country's Safer Internet Centre may have produced. So always a good way of keeping up to date with things that are going on, not just in your country, but across Europe and the European Union as well. And in fact, that's where it comes in on the news part of the site. So if you go into there, it's regularly updated with posts, not just from our team, but across the network as well. And if you go and have a look at it at the moment, most of the current news updates are about the work of different Safer Internet Centres to celebrate Safer Internet Day 2025. So it's a really nice, easy way to find out what was going on in your country, but also any specific information or advice that you can use as a parent or caregiver, or even information for your children as well about the theme that your country may have chosen for Safer Internet Day. And we heard Egle talking about cyberbullying earlier, and Manuela mentioning it as well, really important issue. And we know it's an important issue because Manuela mentioned when she introduced Egle that it is the most common reason for people reaching out to the Safer Internet Centre helplines across the network. And in fact, on the news section of the site, we do publish a regular quarterly update of the statistics that we collect from the contacts to the Safer Internet Centre helplines. And I'll just put a chart up just to show you and prove to you that indeed cyberbullying is the most common reason for contacting the helplines. And I'm afraid that has been consistent for many years now. So it does show it is a persistent issue. And I think Egle did a fantastic job this morning of breaking that down and giving some really good practical advice for what you can do as a family to try and tackle that issue. Because we do know that it is one that affects a number of children, and it is one that continues to be an issue year on year. So it's a great way of keeping up to date with the work of the helplines as well. But I just wanted to spend a few moments talking about the Parents and Caregivers Corner. So under the Learning Corner section of the site, there are different learning corners. One is for teachers and educators, which I'm not really going to talk about today, but has a wealth of information there. One is for parents and caregivers. And we do also have a section reserved for young people, which is currently in development. So there's not too much on there, but it will be growing in the near future. But on the Parents and Caregivers Corner, there is plenty of free information and advice. There are what we call learning modules, which are things you can click into. You don't have to sign up or log into anything, but you can work through the material in that learning module to help you become more familiar with a particular aspect of digital citizenship or online safety. And in there is lots of advice and suggestions about how you can work with your children, what advice you can give them, where you can find further information and help if you need it on a particular topic. So we are just currently refreshing and updating it because we've just been doing a bit of checking and cleaning of the information recently. But there are 3 introductory modules that sit in that section. 2 of them are currently online. I think the third is just being re-uploaded. That cover some core things that are important for all families to understand. And you can see them on the screen here. The importance of knowing how to start those discussions, as we've already been talking about today across our speakers. How do you have these discussions with your child about different areas of online safety? How can you best support them? A module that covers an overview of the risks that your child might face online, with the caveat that, of course, depending on the age of your child, their level of maturity and development, their experiences and what they like to do, the risks can vary dramatically from one child to another. But it gives you a broad overview of the types of risks and things to be aware of as a parent about things that may affect your child online. And then finally, the importance of understanding different types of skills. And we touched upon a few of those throughout our speakers this morning already, but the kind of skills that you need to be safe online go beyond just the protective safety skills. You need to have things such as financial literacy, which Karen was talking about, of course, in terms of online gaming and purchases. You need to have an awareness about how other people behave and how to show empathy and how to work together, as Egle was talking about as well. You need to understand ways of setting boundaries and expectations, as Jane was talking about at the start. So there's a wide range of different skills that people need to acquire to truly be safe online, and that module explores it further as well. And then in addition to those, and we're building on these regularly, a number of deep dive modules that help explore specific topics, 1 or 2 of which we've already heard about today. So you can see on the left the topics that are already developed, and we are continuing to develop those on a regular basis to provide more in-depth information on specific topics that may require slightly different advice or approaches as well. So all of that is completely free to access. I'm afraid it is only available in English, but all the text is contained on the page, and it's quite easy to use translation tools in many cases to translate that into your native language if needed. But well worth checking out if you're curious and you want to learn more about some of these particular topics as well. The one that you can see just near the bottom of the screen, manipulative marketing in online games, is some of the materials we formed as part of the AdWise online campaign. So it links back nicely to what Karen was talking about earlier as well. And you already saw a quick screenshot of this, but I'm just going to add a little bit more detail to what Jane was talking about in her presentation. She did indeed mention our parental controls guide. It's very easy to find. If you go into the Learning Corner section and you click on the Parent and Caregivers Learning Corner, near the top of the page, there's a great big banner that you can press on that takes you straight through to this guide. And you can see from this screenshot, there are specific pages talking about different types of devices and the types of parental controls that you may find on there. And indeed, in her presentation, Jane did talk about things such as Google's Family Link tool. And if I just highlight a couple of screenshots from the smartphones section of the guide, we do have a section around Android smartphones and tablets and one around Apple or iOS devices. And in there is an actual link that takes you through to Google Link in terms of Android, and indeed directly through to Apple's own pages around parental control advice. So although we don't provide how-to guides with breakdown instructions on these pages, there is a link on all of these sections to take you through to manufacturers' pages where they do keep this information up to date. And that's the best way of making sure that you're always accessing information relevant and up to date in terms of the devices that you may be using as a family. So that's a nice, easy way to find all of that information as needed. And then finally, you've already heard fantastic information from 3 Safer Internet Centres today, from Belgium, from Ireland, and from Lithuania. They, in some cases, were representing the awareness portion of the centre, the organisation or the body as part of the centre responsible for developing information and advice and educational materials. You did, of course, hear from Egle, who's from one of the helplines. So every centre has an awareness centre. They have a helpline, which Egle hailed from, and they do also indeed have a hotline for reporting child sexual abuse material. They also, as you heard from Jane mention at the start, they also have youth participation in activities and youth panels. So there are 4 kind of component parts. But if you do need to get in contact with either the helplines or the hotlines for your National Safer Internet Centre, there's a nice easy link that you can get to straight away on the Better Internet for Kids platform. You can then search for your centre from the drop-down list that you can see on the screenshot there, and it will give you the specific details for reaching out and making contact. And I did see a question in the chat a little bit earlier. Someone was asking around issues around the use of their images being used by a different account on things like Instagram. I'd highly recommend reaching out to the helplines. They can offer additional advice and support. So if you reach out to your national helpline, I'm sure they can help you to take that issue forward as needed. But an invaluable source of information, so please do reach out to them. And as you've already heard today, they are doing fantastic work, not just in supporting people who contact the helplines and the hotlines, but producing great educational material as well. So that's all from me. Just a very quick overview. If you need to get in contact, please do feel free. My email address is on the screen, but I do highly recommend that you go and have a little explore of the Better Internet for Kids platform, so you can find all the fantastic information that's been shared by my colleagues and many more besides as well. But thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you for offering this quick tour around the fantastic Better Internet for Kids platform. Thanks also to the 3 speakers that precede you, because I think this is really a very concrete example on how a European strategy translates then in concrete action and services really for the citizens. So Better Internet for Kids, 3 pillars: protection, empowerment, and youth participation. What are we missing today in this session is the voice of the youth, because we were really trying to put together, the expert adult and adult to adult conversation, but also many of the tips that they have provided to you are really based on conversation and consultation of the young people. For instance, for the cyberbullying action plan, the very first things that we did was to discuss this topic at the Safer Internet Forum, which was child-led. And we will continue. The next important activity in the pipeline is a consultation of young people on the draft of the guidelines on Article 28. So really, just to show you how it's important and how it is being mainstreamed. Then I started by saying that video games is not also so attractive and charming for young people in general, for children as well for the adults, as also many positive features, can enhance the cognitive skills, like problem solving, enhance the strategic thinking and high coordination, offer social interaction and many other positive things. You have heard that, earlier how to play smartly and safely. Now we will hear from my colleagues from Connect I3 how in general the Commission is supporting the sector of video games. So Bastien Remy is a policy officer and he covers the journalism and video games sector, focusing on the dialogue with industry, the generation of data on supply and demand trends, and the publication of call for proposals to strengthen the competitiveness of Europe, of the media in Europe. Bastien, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Manuela. I trust you can hear me well. It looks to be fine. Perfect. And then I'll share and load the presentation, which you would also see. I think we're all set. You can see this.
Yes.
Looks like it. Great. Thank you very much. So indeed, we've discussed a lot the work on the protection of minors. So we'll not go back to this and offer another perspective. Just to say, based on what Karen said earlier, which was very useful on data around Belgium, there's also a lot of industry data available at European level on children's spending and parental supervision. So for those interested, you can also find that those pieces of data online. Now, as we've said, the Commission's role is also to support the EU economy and help all industrial sectors, and video games is an industrial sector. So this is what I will focus on today, and it goes without saying that protecting children and supporting the industry do not need to be mutually exclusive objectives, and they can work hand in hand. So there's a little bit of delay with the presentation, but normally it should show. Yes. So first I want to recall the importance taken over the years by video games. And I remember reading in a newspaper last year the fact that video games is no longer an activity for teenagers covered in crisps. And that statement stuck a little bit with me, and is indeed now leisure for all strata of the population. So you have more than half of the EU population playing games. And Manuela hinted at this earlier, 3 in 4 players are over 18 today. And I would add to that piece of data, something that may surprise some of you, is that on mobile phones, there are more female players than male players. So bottom line is video games is now for everyone. Second, video games is now impacting, or are now impacting, popular culture. So your children probably speak of games like you spoke of films or TV series some years ago. We also have an increasing number of successful films being now produced based on characters or universes from the video games world. There's one actually in the theaters these days, and that's important for us as well in Europe. That's a matter for us as well, because we're very much attached to the diversity of our own European culture. We have a long-standing work on the audiovisual sector and film sector. We want to support the creation of European stories which mirror our own values, lifestyle, and that also justifies that we have an interest in video games, because it is shaping today's culture. Besides this cultural significance, I want to say a few words on economic significance this time. The global video games industry has now surpassed cinema or the music industry by far. This means there's an appeal for video games content today, and that creates in return opportunities for Europeans, for European professionals, whether they are video games professionals or students. We have more and more training institutions focusing on video games. So for now, we currently have more than 100,000 people across the EU working for the industry, and it is part of our objectives to help them keep their jobs, find jobs, improve working conditions. And that's very important, knowing the crisis that the sector has recently gone through. Those of you may have followed that over the past 2 years. And finally, a few words on the contribution of video games to society. video games, as we all know, have an interactive component, which makes it appealing to people. But that interactive component can also be used for more than just entertainment and playing. There's, for example, a large potential of video games to contribute to other industrial sectors. We could name many, could be defense, space, health. So it's also going beyond what we know of it. We also have more and more cases of good use or serious use of video games, for example, in classrooms to improve teaching. So this is, of course, not about putting kids more in front of screens than necessary, but it's about exploiting the potential of video games to help children. It can be memorize, it can be help them spot fake news or steer an interest in a number of different topics. And we see the industry moving towards this direction with some interesting initiatives to help players, for example, discover history or to play educative modes of existing video games. I've put here a few examples, such as the European franchises Assassin's Creed and also the game This War of Mine. That one, for example, is now part of secondary school curricula in Poland. So we have a growing application of video games in those environments. And we have also recent surveys. One was out a few days ago showing that schools are looking for such collaborations and they can benefit from them. Second point, yes, in case you're asking, we in Europe can also be proud of what we do in the video game sector. We count with some recent hits and successes at global level. A recent one was called, for example, Baldur's Gate. Some of you may have heard about this. But the rest of the video game ecosystem still very much depends on non-European actors and companies which in the economy of the European sector capture part of the revenues. That's also a point of interest for us as well, is to see how to best support them. And I've listed here a few examples of those platforms or distribution platforms, but also online intermediaries or e-stores or payment service providers, which are mostly non-European, and we're trying to see into this. Now, against this background, we in the European Commission, so the more executive arm of the European Union, we were instructed by national governments, so by your governments, but also by members of the European Parliament, whom you elect every 5 years, to continue working on video games and to underline its contribution to society and to economy. So we were also called to support its competitiveness and to work on the mobility of professionals, to work on statistics, to work on investments, and of course, and that's very important because it's core in the industry to protect consumers and minors. This has been largely addressed today. Now, in practical terms, what have we done as the European Commission? I'm taking here the long time. First, video games as a sector is not in a regulatory void. It's not an under-regulated sector. We have many pieces of legislation which apply. I could mention competition law. I could mention copyrights. There are also recent pieces of legislation which aim at limiting harmful and illegal activities online and prevent large companies from abusing their market power. Manuela also mentioned earlier today the Digital Services Act guidelines to protect minors online, so they would provide guidance for platforms to have more compliant practices. I could also add PEGI, which is, as you see on the screen, the Pan-European Self-Regulatory Age Rating System. You have seen that on video games. That includes also a common set of industry practices governed by the industry and initially promoted by the European Commission. Second brief point here is the dialogue with the industry. We cannot expect the industry to understand and respect our rules, and we cannot help adequately the industry if we do not speak regularly. So what we have done is to multiply opportunities to exchange with the industry and understand one another and one another's needs. Beyond regulation and dialogue, there's financing, which is the core of our activity. So we've been financing the early stages of video game development since 2016 with small grants, around 200,000 euros per project, with the objective to support promising and quality European video games, of course, without interfering in artistic direction. These amounts are modest. We know that today the biggest video games, they can cost 100 millions of euros for marketing only. But we have been able to support quality games which have broken through. The Witcher, It Takes Two, a number of these games which are now quite popular. We also step in our work on investment. The video game sector, as you may know, is very used to working with private investors, which is welcome. But we also know there are not enough investments in that sector. So we are using public money to co-invest with private entities and help companies build their capacities. So I could mention other funding streams, but in short, companies, organizations linked to video games can receive support from the EU, whether they are developers, publishers, startup, whether they are a gaming event, whether they're a school, whether they're an investor or a trade association. We're also helping with data. Getting information on the sector, on the market can be expensive in time or in money for video games companies, which are often small teams. We have to know that in Europe, we have very small and micro enterprises in the video game sector. So to help the industry, we collect, compute, and publish many pieces of data. And in this respect, we will soon issue a 40-page long report on the video game sector with information on its economic performance of the European industry, with information on employment, on investments, as well as on technologies and many other aspects. My last slide now, we also look into consumer data together with industry data, and we will publish the results of a consumer survey carried out late last year with 44,000 Europeans on their gaming habits. So these are adult respondents, yet I do believe this could be of interest to you today, for example, for parents, because we would also present data on issues that families face in video games, also on how much money they spend, on how they perceive video games. So a variety of questions and insights for all EU member states. So this could help measure the sentiment of European consumers on video games. It will be called the European Media Industry Outlook, and this will be for the month of June. So you can stay tuned. And I will leave it there. I'll just put here a quick email address for you to be in touch, and I'm available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thanks for being really so well complimentary, and indeed it's very interesting, and we are always, very much hungry of data, and so to know that some new data can come and inform also our policy is really very relevant. On the Better Internet for Kids platform, we will also publish soon a guide on video games for parents. So again, the two sides are really proceeding well aligned. Now it's time for to answer to some of the questions. So I would ask Garrett perhaps to take some or to cluster some and to try then to redirect to the speaker for the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuela, and thank you, Bastian, for your presentation as well. Very interesting. Yes, I've been keeping an eye on the questions as they've been coming in on the Slido throughout the session. Thank you to everyone who's posted a question or a comment or has provided some links to useful information as well. I think given the amount of time that we have, the fairest way to do this is to go back through each of our speakers and ask them one or two questions based on the things that did come up in the Slido. So if we go all the way back to Jane, Jane, we had a question from a parent in the chat just asking or expressing some nervousness about apps like Snapchat that are able to track your location, particularly through Snapchat. It's through the Snap Maps feature. And just wondering your thoughts on apps like that, where children's location can be detailed to other users very easily.
Thanks, Gareth, and thanks to the person who asked the question. I remember when Snap Maps was first launched, and there was quite a few similar concerns around that feature, and I'll share kind of some views from children and young people around it. Some teens find it kind of helpful so that they could know where their friends were, so they quite liked that feature. Other teens find it not so helpful because if they were missing out on things, so there's this idea of FOMO as well. From a parent's perspective, you know, I think we can understand why there might be concerns around location sharing on any platform. We do have a really good explainer on how to switch it off, how to manage it, what are some of the risks, what are some of the concerns. And, you know, I think the most important thing parents can do if they're worried about any of these features or thinking about social media is to take a look at the app, at the platform, take a look at the explainer guide, look at the risks and challenges around that, talk to their teen about that and come to agreement together about, you know, it depends what age and stage your child or your teen is at, whether you think that's an appropriate feature for them to have, whether, you know, it's useful for them to have that on, and to talk to them and agree them with that. You know, and, you know, this isn't just about location sharing, it might be about other platforms or games. You know, it may not be useful right now, but you can always go revisit that, you know, so maybe they're not ready for to go on Snapchat or Instagram, but you can always revisit it. I'm going to share a link to some of those explainers I talked about in the chat on Slido, if that's helpful as well. Thanks, Gareth.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you, and I'm sure people will appreciate the additional information. There was one other comment that came in, or question that came in on your presentation, but I'll answer that briefly. That was just saying that the time tracking feature on the Instagram Family Center didn't seem to be working properly. It was suggesting a child was online when they were asleep in bed upstairs and their iPhone was downstairs. I think on that one, it's just worth making sure that all devices and apps are kept up to date with the latest version, so they're all in sync. Making sure that the time zones are set correctly across different accounts as well, because sometimes there can be a mismatch where it thinks that one child is in America and their parents in Europe or something like that. And if all else fails, it's the classic uninstall and reinstall sometimes works as well. I did a very quick Google search when that issue came up, and that seemed to be the majority of the advice. But I think if you're having further issues on that, reaching out to Instagram directly might be a good way to try and resolve that issue. Right, we'll move on to Karen. And actually, the questions that came in linked a bit with things that I know the Commission are very much involved in as well. So I welcome any input from Karen from Manuela or Bastian as well. But Karen, the question that came in was around whether companies have properly defined what loot boxes are so that everyone's on the same page. And the question was kind of suggesting if they know what loot boxes are, they can maybe look for ways of classifying loot boxes differently, perhaps to get around the rules. But are you aware of any specific discussions about what is actually defining what a loot box is, so everyone's clear?
Well, I think it's a very good question, and I think there are a lot of good definitions out there, but they are a bit different, and that's also something that they found in the Belgian research project that there are very good definitions that are used by the EU, for instance. There are also definitions by the industry, but then some people have other definitions. I do, however, think the definition is quite clear. That the idea is that you buy an item and you get a random outcome, and that you don't know beforehand what the outcome will be. So I think that's the main issue, the main part of it that's clear for everyone. So I think that's yeah, that's fair there. I also saw in the chat some comments about the refund, and that's something I forgot to mention, but it's definitely true. So for the game developers or the games that are also member of Video Games Europe, they have refund policies. So that's very good, so that you can always contact them in case of unexpected purchases by your child. You can contact them, and then there are refund policies that work very well.
Thanks, Karen. And yes, I believe I saw a representative from Video Game Europe in the comments as well, who gave some really helpful advice around that too. I guess one interesting thing to point out is, of course, that not all video games companies are members of the trade unions in Europe, particularly smaller developers who make apps on the app stores. So there can sometimes be complications about getting refunds if they offer in-app purchases. But I think, again, in many cases, going to Google or to Apple or the App Store provider is sometimes a good way of helping to get a refund as well. Manuela, I don't know if you had anything to add just in terms of the Commission's work. I know there was some things in the Slido around the recent thing around the Digital Fairness Act and the rulings on virtual currencies and things like that. I don't know if you had anything to add at this point.
No, much more of what I've already mentioned, that there are still considerations, still in early stage, but the way it will look at the protection of minors will be from a consumer angle and really to address gaps in existing legislation, namely the DSA. Yeah, but under BIC, of course, we will keep complementing to awareness raising activities, so that in any case any consumer is well informed and possibly make responsible and informed choices.
Super, thank you. It's very much an area that's still in development, isn't it? I think there's a lot of conversations going on at the moment. So watch this space, I think, is the answer to that one. Let's come to Egle and her presentation around cyberbullying. So there was a really good question in the chat about what you thought around platforms that require you to use your real identity for your account in order to dissuade fake accounts or to try and combat cyberbullying. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess the question is used for what? Like, what is this used for? Because I guess it all depends on the activities.
Yes, I think the question was suggesting, is it helpful for platforms to have accounts where you have to use your real identity?
Okay, so for all platforms. Yeah, well, in a way, I could also see that in some cases, I guess for people it's important to stay anonymous. So yeah, like I said, it really depends on what are we doing online, and yeah, for example, for I don't know, for some, let's say, LGBT community, it's important to have like a safe space. So, and children do use in various internet spaces as safe spaces for them. So yeah, I don't see it as a like a absolute solution for everything, but yes, it would, like in some cases it would be really helpful.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's that fine balance between being able to adopt a different identity or persona online, or even to be anonymous, versus having to be your true self or your true identity. There are pros and cons on both sides. And then just one other question for you, Egle. Another good question came in, and you may be really well placed to answer this as being part of the helpline. Someone was just asking for any advice on steps on how to protect their personal photos on social media to prevent other people from using them as their profile photo or to try and impersonate them in some way. Do you have any advice at all?
Yeah, it's also quite a tricky question these days when we have images everywhere. And I guess, yeah, privacy of accounts and well, one of the tips that people don't like, but it works, I guess, not posting good quality pictures might also, like, it's important for everyone who is online to like kind of follow how do I look online? How many pictures do people have of me? Because that's well, with deep fake technologies, it's very easy. Like the more they have, the more images they have of me, the better quality, the easier it is to use it for bad purposes. So yeah, I guess reviewing privacy of account and reviewing like how much do I post and who can see it.
Okay,
Super,
thank you. I
Some
think
great
that
advice.
is, yes, it's such a interesting, passionate area that we could stay here for almost forever. But now is really time to wrap up and to thank you. Starting with the many participants online. This session and its format really reflected and follow up to a need which arose in the Safer Internet Day months when we have a similar session, but not on Connect University and not recorded. So also some colleagues say, oh, we really want then these tips then to be as concrete as possible, and also to have the possibility of going to the schools and parents. So that's why then we decided today to have the Connect University and also to record it. So many thanks to Alessandro, the king behind the Connect University, for helping us. Many thanks to European Schoolnet, here represented by Garrett, for organizing the content of the session together with Paola and Dylan from my Better Internet for Kids in my unit. Thanks as well to Bastien for joining the group and also opening, the discussion and the perspective to adults and the competitiveness and the economic angle. I would say the final message can be really that in this digital age and age in general we are living, we are all confronted with a lot of opportunities, some challenges. Our duty as policy makers is to enhance the opportunities and mitigate the risk, and we will keep doing that. Keeping doing that together is also the way we are working in the Commission across many services, and also many commissioners are really speaking each other and trying to advance on this. So the message is really we have to stay united in diversity. We also are, of course, multilingual in the EU, and that's why perhaps it can be of interest the next session on Connect University next week on the 15th of April. There will be a session on what the language technology offers. So you are invited also to follow that one. And then on the 24th of April, there will be a session on the digital wallet. I mentioned that we are working on a mini wallet as a bridge, but then if you want to discover more about the wallet in general, please pencil in your diary also the session on the 24th of April. And with this, I think I can just wish you a very nice weekend, and thanks again. Bye.